So we have some new polls coming out about the 2024 election. And look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They're abysmal. They are absolutely abysmal and somewhat astonishing, if I'm being honest with y'all. So this one is from YouGov, 2,385 people. And nationally, we have Trump at 50% and Biden at 49%. So in a rematch, we have Trump here up 1 point. Now, I want to remind you of something. The way that the Electoral College works, in order for Biden to win, Biden would need to be up like 3 percentage points at least, because of the way that the support for the various parties are split up around the country. You've had a situation where Hillary Clinton, for example, won the popular vote by 3 million votes, but lost the Electoral College. Joe Biden won the Electoral College, but he had to win by 7 million votes in order for that to happen. So here we have a situation where he's just flat out down to Trump up front. Now, to be fair, of course, this is within the margin of error, but still, it should be nowhere near this if the Democrats were half competent. So I'm going to talk more about that in a second. But look at this independence number as well, man. This is devastating. You have Trump at 57% and Biden at 42%. So Trump is blowing Biden out of the water with independence. That, ladies and gentlemen, is unsustainable. If you want to win the election, you're going to have to win independence. All right, I got more for you. By more than 2 to 1, voters say they're financially worse off, not better off, than they were before the pandemic. A new CBS poll finds, and those voters who say they're worse off are supporting Trump over Biden 71 to 28%. So, look, this gets to something we talked about the other day. One of the biggest mistakes of the Biden administration is that we had the sunsetting of all of these COVID-era social safety net provisions, like expansion of unemployment insurance and the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit and, like WIC and all these government programs that help people at the lower end of the economic ladder. Those people actually got a tremendous amount of help during the pandemic, to the point where, this is a fact everybody knows, we had a reduction of child poverty during the pandemic of nearly 50%. They nearly cut child poverty in half. Why? Because they chose. It was a policy choice to say, all right, let's help people out because they're going to be struggling colossally during this pandemic. And so they were getting help. And then all of these extended programs that we had during the pandemic, there's a sunset provision on them. They went away and they weren't re-upped at all. Well, guess what? When people came to rely on this social safety net that was genuinely helping them in a time of need, and now it goes away, now they're struggling, and it feels horrendous because they were getting the help and now they're not. And so letting those programs sunset was a horrible mistake. At the very least, you could have kept like 2 of them, going, continue 2 of them, so you take the edge off for people in an economy where, as you all know, the unemployment rate might be low, inflation has come down drastically, but still you have like 60 or 70% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. So that's where we get a poll number like this. A very obvious mistake, and I think the reason why Biden did it is because he bought into the line of Larry Summers and the neoliberals who tell him, like, curbing inflation is the number one goal, and of course these big government programs are leading to inflation, which, by the way, is not necessarily true. Greedflation is a much more widely accepted theory now, that corporations were jacking up profits because they could effectively. So they were leading into the inflation hysteria, causing a lot of the problem along with the supply chain. And he bought into the fear-mongering, the deficit fear-mongering, the debt fear-mongering, the inflation fear-mongering, and he got rid of those. Well, here we are now. Here we are. And these numbers do not look good for old Joe. Then, of course, we get this. This is a Quinnipiac poll. Do you think blank is too old to effectively serve another 4-year term as president or not? 68% say Joe Biden is too old. There's another poll that just came out. 73% say Joe Biden is too old. Donald Trump, only 34%. He's 3 years younger, but only 34% say he's too old. Why? It's all optics. It's all optics. Trump has the orange face, the dyed hair, and he's a bloviator, and he's charismatic, and he talks a lot, and it looks like he's more competent because he can get through full sentences, whereas Biden looks like he needs a direct injection of Adderall into his veins every time he opens his mouth, or else he'll fall asleep on stage. and forget where he is. And so as a direct result, here we are. Even though Trump's only 3 years younger, the public is saying Biden's too old. 68% in this poll, 73% in another poll, and it's only 34% that say that about Trump. I'm sure there's some other polls that have Trump, closer to 50% or whatever, saying he's too old. But guys, there's no sugarcoating this. These polls, at this point, are disastrous. Now, look, I will say, I stand by my prediction that if it really does come down to Biden versus Trump, or almost any Democrat versus Trump, I think there's some minor exceptions, but Trump is the least electable general election candidate for the Republicans because there's just so much dirt on him. He's such a wild card. 91 criminal charges, 4 indictments, says things like, I'm going to suspend the Constitution. I do think that really when push comes to shove on voting day, people will think, I can't go through that again with Trump. It was just too wild and wacky and insane a time. Every day you woke up, you had to check the news to make sure the world didn't explode overnight. I do think that these polls are not really going to be reflective. I think there's like a built-in, bias in favor of Trump in these polls. But as we move on, when it comes closer to election day, he will be at a disadvantage. So I believe that, but let's be clear, either way, it shouldn't be this close. Either way, it shouldn't be this close. It should be easy to defeat a guy like Trump, and every poll should be showing the defeat of a guy like Trump. So what's the problem here? Well, number one, the most obvious point in the world is it is true that Biden is really frail, really old, can barely get through a sentence, doesn't look competent at all. Everybody can see it. That's a huge, huge, huge problem. Now, what can you do about that? Well, there's not much you can do about that. Like I said, maybe give him an injection of Adderall or make him take a whole bunch of pills before he gets on stage. Yeah, that would help. But drugging him can only get him so far, right? So that's one of the problems. The other problem is I literally have no idea what the Democratic message is supposed to be. I have no idea. They seem to not have a strategy, even though they're watching Trump be a wrecking ball in the Republican primary, knowing you're probably going to have to deal with this guy. So Biden hasn't said a word about the criminal charges against Trump. He hasn't said anything. Now, I get that he's scared because Republicans are saying, oh, these are Biden's indictments and he's leading the charge, bro. And so they're trying to make it seem like, oh, it's political and it's problematic and Biden's behind it all. And so they're scared of that notion to feed into like, maybe I am behind this, right? But first of all, I don't think he is behind it. Second of all, even if he was, that would be based because he's correct. Something can be both political and also accurate, right? Like this could be a political move to go after Trump, but also he committed 472 crimes, so you should be going after Trump. So if I was Biden, I would not shut up about this guy has 91 criminal charges against him.